All right. Happy Friday, everyone, and welcome back to another Learning Tech Talks, where we are continuing to explore the landscape of learning technology while cutting through the fluff and getting your questions answered. We have a bonus guest today, which you would not have guessed from the countdown because I only had Stephan Pineau's name on the countdown slide, but I am also joined again by Peter Olyarchuk, right? Is that I got it. And you know the best part about this, anybody watching or listening, I asked Peter, remind me again how to pronounce your last name. And for the first time in my life, I think someone just said, oh, just go to olyarchuk.com and the phonetic is right there. And I went, what, who does this? So Peter, you've got some powerful friends in powerful places to have the internet just being able to make sure your name is articulated correctly. So
Thank you.
anyway, they're from Training Orchestra, and they've been on the show before, but we're going to revisit this because a lot has changed in the space of training resource management, the TRMS, which we'll get into in a few. But before we get started, as always, we've got to have a little bit of fun, get to know each other, and do some other things. So everybody can play along too. If you're watching, comment in, and I'd encourage you to participate because what fun is it to watch something live if you're not actually engaging? So do this throughout. But Peter and Stephan, let's see where you go first. I'm going to start with Stephan. Where are you in the world today?
So today I am in beautiful Florida. This accent is, yes, not from Miami, but I live in Miami. We had some meeting yesterday with some good friends in Canada, and it seems it's snowing. So lucky to be here in Florida, where it's still rainy for the most part of the year.
So hang on, because I think last time we talked, you were in process. You were moving to Florida. Is this, how new is the Florida setup?
Yeah. So absolutely, it's 4 years I'm living in Florida, and
okay, so it's not that.
I used to travel a lot. So you were right. I was spending something like 100 days outside. Flying to Europe, to London constantly. But now I spend most of my life now in Florida.
All right. So maybe you were in between locations when we talked last, but
Absolutely.
Yes, the weather there is definitely much better. I'll jump in because I'm in Wisconsin with my friendly house plant Fred, and it is cold. It is cold today. But my brother also joined the stream and commented in. He's in northern Minnesota, so I bet it's a lot colder there than it is here. I don't know if he has snow yet. But Peter, how about you? Where are you today? Are you in Florida too?
No, I'm in South Carolina, but I'm in the northwest corner of South Carolina. But I can tell you that we had our first frost. It was very cold this morning, 20 degrees colder than normal.
Okay.
So winter is coming.
Winter is coming. Yeah, I'm looking now. It's a balmy 34 here right now. So sunny and 34. And of course, for our non-American friends, I'm not even going to try and do the Celsius conversion off the top of my head, but I think it's pretty close to zero because that's the one thing I do know. Freezing is close. Anyway, all right, winter is upon us unless you're in Miami, in which case winter is never there. But let's shift gears to our icebreaker question because I'm actually really curious where you go with this. So I'm going to reverse the order. Peter, you get to go first this time. But what is something, and again, if you're watching, I want to hear what you have to say. But Peter, what is something on your desk, a nearby wall, or out the window that cheers you up during the day?
Well, okay, so there's this thing over here, and I don't know if you can see it. Oh, anyways.
It's a guitar of sorts.
It's
some sort of stringed instrument.
It is. It's a guitar, okay? So,
okay.
So this is my guitar that when I went on vacation this summer, I didn't bring a guitar with me. And I'm one of those people that's been trying to learn to play the guitar for 30 years, so I'm still definitely a beginner. And every once in a while, I try to pick it. So, anyways, I've been trying to practice. And I went on vacation this summer. We drove, but I didn't bring a guitar with me because I didn't think I had room at the time. But then I was like, I'm up in New York, and I was like, oh, gee, I wish I could practice. And my brother-in-law, who we were visiting, he's left-handed, so his guitars are all strung the wrong way for me. And I said, boy, I would love to find a guitar. Go to a thrift shop and find a guitar that I could just practice with. It cost me $25. Well, the funny thing was we went to the House of Guitars in Rochester, New York, very famous guitar store. Probably, I think it's supposed to be the biggest in the world.
It wasn't $25 though, was it?
So here's the thing. So they had when we got there, they had a sidewalk sale going on, and they had a bunch of used guitars. And we look in, I look at the prices on them, and I see this one guitar there, and they had $59, and it looked pretty beat up. And I'm like, okay, I'm not going to get it. So then finally, so just to make a long story short, just before we left, I went back and talked to the guy that was out there. I told him I'm looking for a $25 guitar, and he offered to sell me this one for $30. And I said, it's got to be 25. So I ended up having
You bartered over $5.
Actually, yeah, I did. But what it came down to was a game of rock, paper, scissors. And the deal was, if I won rock, paper, scissors, then I could have it for 25. Otherwise, I had to take it for 30. And I'm like, okay,
and you
that's
got
fair.
it. So now it's a constant reminder that you're a rock, paper, scissor champion in addition to a perpetual beginning guitar player. All right, I like that. But
now
you know what? Either way, you would have won, because worst case, you would have paid $30, which wouldn't have been that bad anyway.
And it actually
wouldn't have been that bad.
It's got some problems, but it actually plays really well. So
all right.
So, anyways, that's my
All right, Stephan, how about you? What do you got? What's your
Yes,
where does your Marie Kondo joy come from?
Yeah, I was happy to have Peter first, because I was thinking, what can I say? What is the best that I have? Is it the staple?
Making it up
that I use it. I really love this staple, And Peter, you don't know how to use the guitar, but I know how to use this staple, just to let you know. So I'm showing you something that I know how to use. Is it all the awards that we have that the marketing send me? So my table is full of those great awards.
Oh yeah,
and
look at
it's
that.
not that, to be transparent. It's that I have, my screen, and obviously I'm French. I cannot hide that. I'm trying to do my best, but with this accent, I have to admit. And so I have this picture of my region, where I'm from. And I don't know, it reminds me all the good cheese that there are there, the good wine and everything. So yeah, it is what it is. But really, my preference is absolutely this little staple.
Stapler. All right, so it's either the picture that brings you joy of your homeland, or the purple lavender stapler that also brings you joy when you're trying to hold your papers together. I can see where it's a really tough mix. Okay. All right. So
and
mine.
What brings joy to you and me, Chris, today is not to hear Peter playing guitar. It brings joy to us.
You know what? That is bringing joy. That is bringing joy to us and anybody who's watching and listening now or at any time in the future. So yes, good point, Stephan. So mine is I actually have this lovely little cactus. Okay, Facebook sent it to me, and I love it. I actually love this little cactus. They sent it to me, and so it sits on my desk because I say I'm less nurturing than a desert, because I would probably kill just about anything. But this cactus is proof that I can care for a plant. And so it's a constant reminder that, you know what, if you really dig down and push hard enough, you can accomplish just about anything, including keeping this cactus alive. All right. Enough of the shenanigans. Let's get back to the topic at hand, which is Training Orchestra, which is a TRMS, which, if you read my posts, good grief, I read a post this week about the PXP is now coming into place, that it goes along with the EXP, and then we've got the LXP, and we've got enough acronyms to put down a horse here in the learning space. But let's talk about Training Orchestra, because some people who may be catching this may not have seen the first episode and may be going, TRMS. What on earth is a TRMS? And Training Orchestra, they've been talking about guitars a lot. Are we talking music here today, or what's going on? So give me your elevator description. If you bump into somebody and they say, you work at Training Orchestra, what on earth is that? And you say, oh, that's a training resource management system. And they go, that's not really helping me right now. How do you respond to that?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So I would say that usually, to explain a little bit the need and what we do, most of our clients will have one of the very best LMS, but still they manage instructor-led training and virtual instructor-led training with Excel spreadsheet and Outlook. So we at Training Orchestra, we complement an LMS. We sit more on the back end. The LMS is really designed for the learner to give access to e-learning content, while we at Training Orchestra, we're a scheduling system. We manage the availability of the trainers, we manage the rooms, we manage all the logistics and financial operations in one hand, instead of managing that in Excel spreadsheet and Outlook. And in the second hand, we also have an instructor engagement portal where we can communicate and interact with the different instructors. So in other words, we orchestrate the training operation. We do not overlap.
See, there we go. Okay.
Yeah, we do not overlap with the learning management system. Learning management system or learning, or a learning experience platform or experiential learning system, they focus a lot on the learner, and we focus a lot on the trainer, the resources, finding the best available trainer, guarantee a conflict-free planning, making the most of your training investment, budget, cost, and that's a little bit what we do. So we complement each other, and we do not overlap.
Okay. Well, and I'm going to pull this one up because you did share this slide with me, and I think it does, just for people who may be going, I hear you, but I don't necessarily understand. And again, it makes a little bit more sense of the acronyms, because this to me is, we're talking front end versus back end in many regards. And I think that's what you're getting at is, if you haven't been in learning and development, let's say you're listening to this and you're not an L&D person, or you haven't been on the instructor-led side, there is a lot of coordination and effort that goes into making sure the right people are on the right sessions and we've got the right resources aligned to pull all this together. It's a bit of an operational symphony, if you will, or orchestra, I guess you could say that too. But I think this did for me layer this out really well for people who may be going, so does this compete with an LMS? Because you say training management, is that like learning management? But we're not talking about the same thing. We're talking about the actual back end operations. Fair?
Absolutely. Absolutely, you explained that very well. We're talking exclusively about the back-end operation. So the learner, they will stay in the LXP LMSs. And again, there are 750 LXP LMS. And we are a training scheduling system. So let's say that the use case is that, let's say that you have trainers to manage and make the most of those trainers. Who's the best available trainer? Do this trainer would be available mid-January and speak Spanish and could travel to Toronto? I don't know, those kind of question where you optimize the resource use, where you assign resources. It could be a room, it could be a virtual classroom, it could be both, virtual and in-person classroom.
Well, if you're doing any sort of product, if you work in a manufacturing company, I just think it's as though I've worked for one before. But if I had, I recognize that component where a lot of times people think of instructor-led as just, well, the person just shows up and they just talk to a room of people. And that's not always the case. There's equipment that might need to be used in the room, touch screens, things like that. You might be doing product demos. But I remember back from my early software days where we had to try and coordinate what trainer was at what facility, because we were training at different healthcare sites, trying to figure out who was available, what states they were in. It was, and to your point, back then we were using Excel spreadsheets, and that was almost 20 years ago. So but my understanding, and in many of the conversations I have, a lot of people, that's still how they're managing that. So my question to you is this, and I'm curious, kind of the response on this is, that's not necessarily the big fun, easy to sell to the executive management team, at least on the surface, because that's not what is all over industry trend reports and things like that. So I'm curious, what challenges do you run into when people say, well, why are you still using Excel spreadsheets? Is it a lack of, what leads to that?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yes, I think that there are many reasons. First of all, the LMSs, talk about instructor-led training and virtual instructor-led training, and it's true because they do the registration portion, self-registration, and they do all that. So meanings and giving access to also e-learning content. So there is a little bit of confusion, and usually the clients are surprised that they have the very best LMS, but they realize after, that still they manage instructor-led training, virtual instructor-led training manually. Now, when we talk to the leader, they understand first that 70% of their training investment is instructor-led or virtual instructor-led training. So it's a huge investment. Second, they understand that they are sometimes using trainers with very specific skills and expertise, and they have to make the most of those instructors because it's very rare and costly resources. So this is strategic, because what makes the difference, what makes a training successful, that's the learner. So it's normal to have 750 LMS to manage the learner. It's very important, and there is a lot to do. But it's also finding the best available instructors, and managing your training investment. And it's 70% of the training investment. So it's very big. So I would say that the leaders, the CLO, the HR director, or also the leader in training companies, or those who are in charge of the training of what we call extended enterprise, all those external audience like training of the clients, partners, distributors, they are looking for some solution. We know many of our clients have developed their own solution. So they were investing millions and millions, and they were having their own team for doing 20% of what we do at Training Orchestra, because we're specialized in that. We just do that, and it's 20 years. So I think that the market is really listening, that it's a strategic need. What makes a training a success is finding the best available instructor and the organization portion, and having, a learning path, managing the learner. It's also important. So there is a seat for everyone. And I see just that we complement each other.
Yeah, they play well together. It was interesting. There was a post on LinkedIn I was engaging with this week, and one of the things that came up was, I don't understand why there's so much specialty in the HR learning technology space versus other spaces. And it was interesting as I got into a little back and forth on it, is a lot of times people don't understand the complexity of this. And I think to your point on the LMS piece, it can seem like, well, we can create events in our LMS, and maybe we can even assign an instructor, but it does not, the operational complexity of making sure the right people are there, the right resources, coordinating times, there's a lot more behind the scenes that, to your point, I don't think a lot of times people always recognize how much time and effort has gone into that. I had a conversation with someone else this week who was trying to clean up their operations, because in many regards, a lot of people are facing pressure to try and optimize the resources they have. And it's forcing them to think more about this. Because when I first started the show a little over 2 years ago, I would say there was very limited focus on operations. Only some of the more kind of progressive organizations were thinking more about the operations side. And I would say that's a growing market, as people are starting to realize, hey, we can do better. We can do more to actually optimize the resources we have. And it actually does correlate to a more positive learner experience. I think sometimes that's a miss, is sometimes people think, well, that's back end. Back end doesn't really affect the end user. But yes, it does.
I just wanted to add to that, it's very easy, especially when you're talking to leadership, it's very easy to get an ROI when you start looking at, first off, having visibility over your training operations, right? Being able to optimize, but also looking at your utilization rates, making sure that you're properly utilizing, not underutilizing, but not overutilizing your trainers, your resources. And it's easy to calculate an ROI on that, because, from some casual surveys I've done, I'm finding that a lot of companies out there that are using Excel spreadsheets, their utilization rates might be somewhere 55 to 65% because they don't have the visibility over their operations. And then you imagine getting those utilization rates up to 80-85%. That's a huge return on your investment, and that's just giving you visibility to streamline your operations and such. And so that's an easy conversation with leadership.
Well, and I think to that point, it does. some of these things where people say, oh, this is a tough sell, or it might be difficult to explain the value that we get out of this. And that operational piece, there's actually, in many regards, I've found, and this is just coming from the background I have, in many regards, a lot of times those operational metrics resonate really strongly with business leaders because you're talking a language they're very familiar with. Mm-hmm. The ops, the efficiency, the resource utilization, those types of things. It's a common language, and so when you say, "Hey, we'll be able to do this," it makes sense. It clicks, mm-hmm. and it's not as hard of a conversation as you may think. And I think the other thing, even myself, over the years have struggled with this, and I think this is where this technology can really help with it, is how often do you get asked, well, how much are you utilizing this? Or do you really need this many resources for what we're doing, type of a thing? Or you need to project. I'm going through finance planning right now, where you need to project the next year, 2 years to be able to say, here's what's actually needed. You need to know, and Excel spreadsheets and Post-it notes on sticky boards is not a terribly efficient way to try and do strategic planning. It just doesn't work very well.
I know one organization that was using Post-it notes, a whiteboard, Post-it notes, and a box of tissues to manage their training.
It's the thing is, you can chuckle a little bit, and there's probably people who listen are kind of like, huh, like that's us. It's more common. It's actually pretty common, and I think that's one of the things is saying, hey, you know what, this is really common, but just because it's common doesn't mean that's what we should be doing. In fact, there's a better way, but I would say a lot of people don't realize there is a better, more efficient way to do it. And some of the things I've seen people do to try and get there is they might be using a Trello or a Smartsheet, or they might be using one of these cloud tools, but even that doesn't necessarily address the complexity and nuance of the work that we do in learning and development.
Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely.
So let me ask you this, though. Oh, go for it, Stephan.
Oh, no, just, and I absolutely agree with what you said, and you explained it very well. I would say that also there is a very big challenge, is that which is to find the best available experts to train on a subject, because you may have your group of full-time dedicated instructors. You try to make the most of your trainers, as Peter explained, and optimize the resource use and so on. But you may also have 100, 200, 1,000, 10,000, 100,000 subject matter experts within the organization. And you have to find the best available trainer. What's happening today? You're giving phone call, sending email to a small group of people. Nobody knows, Chris, in your organization, if you speak Spanish, if ever you have the experience to do this and that. And so it's difficult to map first the courses that you can facilitate.
What's funny about that is the subject matter expert piece. I just even think of the phone calls you'll get where, and just again, not advocating for anything in particular, but you'll get, hey, we need an MBTI instructor, or do we have an instructor who's certified in this change management? And it's the emails that fly around and forward and all this stuff to try and nail that down. Are they even available? Oh, they're not. It's a logistical mess oftentimes. Yeah. And it doesn't guarantee also that you will find the best available trainer, because sometimes you do not know. So you're not going to send an email to 1,000 people or to 10,000 people. With Training Orchestra, you have this call for trainer or call for tender capabilities, where you can push to the community. So you can target a specific community. Let's say, well, the IT department, maybe they have some that are certified in this domain or that domain. So you can open to the entire community, and some people will raise the hand and you don't know them. Yes, I speak Spanish. Yes, I may be available the 15th of December. And yes, I'm certified on MBTI. And you didn't know it. So you would have never contacted them. So it's also the guarantee to find the best available trainer. And we know that having the best available trainer makes a big difference. It's not just all about the learner. I think that it's 20 years that we're all about the learners. It's super important. Don't get me wrong. The LMS, the LXP, they are doing, what they are doing is amazing for the learner. But it's also time to think about the instructor, about the resources, about the budget, and the vast majority is instructor-led, virtual instructor-led, or hybrid classroom. Well, and I think this idea that it has to be an either or versus a both and is a false premise. You actually don't have to, because again, even what we said before, this actually doesn't impact the learner experience. But the other thing is, you were talking about this, that especially in large enterprises where you may have a lot of learning professionals, or even like you said, subject matter experts, people like that who have some of these skills that you need to utilize and are in a federated model from learning and development, which I did a poll recently, and a majority of learning organizations don't have this nice central organization where everybody reports up to the same person and they have visibility into these resources. And one of the challenges with that is, and this ties to one of the things we're seeing with the Great Resignation in terms of talent mobility and people feeling like they don't have opportunity to do things outside of their immediate scope. That example you just highlighted there, to be able to say, hey, it might not be someone on my team, but I'm looking for somebody who is capable, qualified, and has the desire to do this session or deliver this training that we may be running in here. This actually opens opportunity for you to actually create mobility within your organization around, you might be able to do a project or deliver something that isn't necessarily in your organization's wheelhouse, but it's helping the broader organization and creating opportunity for your internal resources. So I think at a time when a lot of organizations are dealing with workers who are going, is this it? Is this all that I can do type of a thing? You're actually opening the door for some of this scalability. Okay, so let me ask you this question, because a few things have changed since the first time we talked. I think a handful of things have happened in the world since then, and we've gone through a mass distribution of things. In-person ILT took a torpedo, and then everything went virtual. Now we're kind of coming back to, in many regards, something that I would say is an even more complicated environment to navigate in the hybrid. But I'm curious, what have you seen on your side as organizations who are trying to manage these operations? What's it been like from your side of things to watch, and how have things changed?
Yeah. So here is, and I'm going to share my screen on the page 5 just with Pete. Just here is some of the challenge, by a helicopter standpoint that we're seeing today on the market, and we will then explain very precisely how it impacts the different organization. But first,
Okay.
there is the upskilling and reskilling portion of the entire ecosystem. Now for an organization to succeed, it's not only their employees, but it's also their partners, their clients, their distributors, and you have to upskill and reskill the entire ecosystem. So it's a big trend that we see. While the organization were very focused on the L&D department, employee of the training of the employees, now they want to upskill and reskill their entire ecosystem. It could be franchisee, It could be distributors, it could be agents in your insurance company, it could be clients because you sell complex product, it could be partner because you have distributors like car dealer or anything like that. So, to be successful now, you have to have a skilled ecosystem and not just skilled employees. So it's a big trend. I would say second, there is a war on the talented instructors, finding the best available trainer and best available subject matter experts. So being able to have a skill map of who can train on what, who speak which language, and also better collaborate in real time while they are remote now. Before you were able to knock at the door and say, guys, would you be
run over to their desk and ask if they were available, all this other stuff? Not the case.
Yeah, and there is a war also on talent, because now that everything is reopening progressively, we absolutely need the sales team to be focused on sales and the marketing team to be focused on marketing, but we at the same time need them to train new hires. So there is this competition over the talented instructors, be it dedicated full-time instructors, so let's make the most of those trainers, or also finding the best experts within the organization. The third
Well,
point that
and on that one, I've had a number of conversations recently, and I will say, this is not limited to learning and development. If you talk to any leader in any field right now, people are struggling to not only retain the talent they have, but even get new talent in the organization and have a competitive value proposition to employees. But this right now, I had a conversation with someone a couple weeks ago where they said their best instructors, they're able to go get jobs with other companies for significantly higher salaries and things like this. And a lot of times they don't realize it until they're already out the door. And it's because they don't have visibility into it. They're on a Post-it note that the sticky side fell off and got thrown in the trash, and they've lost sight of this. So I think that visibility into who do you have, what are they capable of doing, and how do we keep them engaged? Going back to that mobility comment I made earlier about how are we making sure we're utilizing people? Because people who are great instructors, they want to be instructing people. They don't want to be sitting on the sidelines waiting for somebody to call and ask if they can be used. That's going to lead to them feeling like, well, maybe I can find something or bring my skills somewhere else.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it's that's also there is always this turnover, and that's why also detecting and mapping the entire trainer ecosystem is something that is also critical, and interacting with them. Always be, in a position to find the best available and to make the most of the strategic resource. Obviously, first strategic resource are the instructor, the full-time instructors, but also make the most of the classrooms, make the most of the different equipments of the virtual classrooms, because it's pretty costly. And there is also a point is that we have a strong pressure to do more and better with less, to reduce the training investment. The main reason why people are moving to e-learning, the number one reason is because they want to save money.
Cost.
So if they want to save money, what do we do about those 70% of investment that are invested in ILT and VILT? Do we manage that in spreadsheet? Is it enough, or does it deserve better? The training.
Which, by the way, the idea that, hey, we should just move to digital learning because it's cheaper. Let's just, if anybody's listening and thinking, hey, that's a valid argument, I would say it's not, and I would not encourage anybody to approach it. But to your point, I think oftentimes that is the mindset of, well, we can do this and be, run more efficient, run less expensive, but you don't have to. And I think that's the thing is, one, it may not necessarily be less expensive, but two, there are ways to optimize that spend and use your resources more efficiently and more effectively, instead of just saying, well, it's too expensive, so let's throw the baby out with the bathwater and we're just going to move and make everything a recorded Zoom session. But just please, for the sake of your learner, don't do that.
Yeah, and even those who want to do that, on an average, there are 70% of ILT and VILT and hybrid classroom. So even those who want to do more and more e-learning and they have this strategy, still they have a lot of ILT and VILT. And how do they manage that? You can manage what you can measure. Where are you with your budget today? Where will you be by the end of the fiscal year? Can you prove to us what's the usage rate of your dedicated instructors? How do you invest as of today? Training is the second largest budget in HR after the payroll. It's giant budget.
Okay, I was going to ask, if you say second largest, you got to be able to say largest. So payroll, okay, got it. Payroll's number one, training's right behind it. Payroll number one,
and training is number two. The budget invested in training is bigger than all the IT investment all over the world. Because when you train your employees, it costs to train them. They spend time being trained on the subject. So, you really compare apple to apple, it's way more bigger, something like 30% bigger. What do? Excel spreadsheet, Outlook? Is it the maximum that we can do? Because for all those, we want to reduce their training investment, and it's important. We understand there are pressure. How can you optimize, make the most? How can you have your budget under control? And also, and Peter, I know that you have a few words to say about that too, but there is a complexification from moving from VILT, which is the situation today. It used to be ILT, instructor-led training. You were having a room and an instructor, but now it's way more complex, and we need to organize a hybrid classroom, or we need a room, a virtual classroom. So it was difficult to manage training operation before. It's becoming impossible, Peter.
Yeah. So let me see if I.
Well, before Peter, but before we jump to this one, I just want to kind of tie off on that point about this. Just again, to hit the nail on the head for anybody who may miss this piece, is this idea that there's nothing wrong with organizations asking us to optimize our approach. I think every organization is always looking to do that. And sometimes we say, well, we just shouldn't because it's the right thing to do for our employees. And why are we asking these questions? And they are good questions to ask. But to your point, Stephan, there are ways that we can optimize that don't require us to eliminate types of things, where we can say, well, no, we actually have this, but the inefficiency that we can squeeze out is actually going to get us more gains than simply cutting and keeping a lot of this inefficiency. So I think that's a really important point to highlight. And Peter, I'm looking forward to this piece about the complexity of hybrid, because I will tell you, just in conversations I have on a regular basis, there is a vast misperception that VILT and hybrid learning is easy compared to instructor-led training. It's a much easier approach, and I would say,
yeah,
no, it's not.
It's not, and we've seen that, and it's actually been an interesting surprise how things changed over. And what I put together here on the screen, and this is a schedule, and it was called the allocation schedule, and this is really a tool to help you optimize. But what I put together here is on the 3 different scenarios for the same time management course as we go as we've progressed over time. So our very first version of this time management is the one on the first and the second, which is our pre-COVID. It was very simple. Okay, it was a course, time management delivered, over 2 days, 2 full days. We had our trainer and we had our classroom, right? And
there was the facility and the resource.
And yeah, it was pretty easy to do one day to the next, right? So then we moved into COVID. Everybody had to pivot. They had to move to, now we got to take everything virtual. Well, one of the issues, first off, was upskilling your trainers to be able to facilitate in a virtual environment. Okay,
which goes back to Stephan's point earlier of knowing in your organization who's actually a really good virtual facilitator and who does not have that skill set yet, because that is a different, varied skill set. And I know a lot of organizations struggled with knowing, this was like our top trainer in the classroom, but they don't have the skills to do virtual.
Yep, and it is a different skill set, and it's learnable, but
it's learnable for sure.
Yeah, but you need to make sure those people are, have those skills. But so at the same time, we've moved from 2 full days to now it's split. It might be Wednesday and Friday, or it might be 3 afternoons,
three sessions spread. It's the complexity is actually, to your point, what you're getting at, and I think this is an important piece. Is it went from it was these 2 days, full days. That's it. We just know we can block that off. Where now it's Monday from 10 to 1 we have a thing, and then the following Thursday from 1 to 3 we've got another thing, and then the week after that it's 3 to 5. It sounds easy. We're only looking for 2-hour blocks, but the complexity of it just accelerated because now you've got 3 chunks in 3 different areas, and they may be able to do one of the 2, but it's not as easy to block that time off.
Exactly, and in addition to having to have your trainer or facilitator who's skilled enough, is also many organizations have added the role of producer. Because it's already difficult enough to train in a virtual environment, but if you have to start worrying about a learner's connection,
breakout rooms and putting things here and opening different decks and
and the chat and everything else, so the role of producer, or sometimes called a moderator, has been is quite prevalent, right? And then managing your virtual classrooms, right? And so that's added to the complexity, and it's been very interesting to deal with. But I can tell you, the Training Orchestra, we like complexity, right? We're purpose. No, we're purpose built to manage training operations and complexity.
You love it to make it easier for people.
Absolutely, that's what we
there
do.
You go.
You know, and so that's our second session, right, in the COVID space. But then we move, one more. So we're on Wednesday to Friday, this session here at Time Management. Now you've noticed, and as far as requirements, so we have, we still have our trainer, right, and then we have our producer, but in addition to our Zoom virtual classroom, because we're going into that hybrid space now, where we're training we have a session where we have both remote and in-person learners. We have to accommodate both a classroom and a virtual classroom here, right? And I know I can't think of any organization I've spoken with recently that is not either doing the hybrid scenario or is at least researching what are the best tools they're going to use for that going forward. But everyone has a plan, to go in that direction. But now we've again added another level of complexity in there in order to coordinate all these activities, and going back, to managing physical rooms, right? So,
and I think that's that piece of hybrid. So if anybody's following even remotely what's been going on from a workforce standpoint, and if you need me to pull that back up, let me know when I can. But I think that point of, it was almost, in some regards, I don't want to say it was easier because we had this whole skill thing, but when the world flipped on its head and everyone went remote, there were the skill challenges, the things that we had to figure out. We had to learn new skills to do virtual. We had to bring producers in. There was some complexity to that. But at least it was that. We moved from this to that. And now we're moving into this age of complexity where hybrid adds a layer of complexity that many organizations are not fully prepared to handle. They just were getting used to doing this virtually, and now the example you're giving, 5 people are going to be in the corporate office, but 7 are going to be remote, and we still need them all to do this at the same time because we can't run 10 different versions of this for people. And so this is pushing organizations and learning leaders to say, how do we actually do this well and have a solid experience? Because I would say the example you showed with the producer, the instructor, the classroom, the virtual classroom, in many ways, when I've done this for hybrid, you almost need another person in there because there's the virtual running facilitation, there's the in-person running facilitation, and then there's the producer trying to pull it back together. And you may have one of those on both ends type of a thing. So the complexity of doing this, if you don't want to have a subpar experience in one or the other, and I think that's what a lot of times you'll see with hybrid, is people will focus on one and the other's just kind of a afterthought. Like, we'll do it in the classroom, but we'll turn on a webcam and just throw a laptop in the back of the room and call it good. Well, that's you used to be able to get away with that. In the hybrid workforce of 21 and beyond, unacceptable. It's unacceptable.
And can you imagine, when and another scenario is now when you're talking about a technical training and you have to have a lab, a computer lab, right? Now you need a physical lab, you need a virtual lab, and there's just even more that you're adding in, again, to more to the training.
It's only going to get crazier because now with the announcements of Meta and what's happening with Meta, we're going to have hardware devices we've got to make sure we've got virtual headsets out to folks to be able to do this. We've got actual resources that we need to moderate with actual end use. I mean, this is the age of complexity is upon us. And I think the paper clips, Post-it notes, and Excel sheets you might have been able to squeak by with 10 years ago. Granted, it was super inefficient, but you might have been able to get away with it. You really can't moving forward. You just can't.
Yeah.
You could have gotten away with it if you had that box of tissues to wipe the tears,
And I would say,
what were you going to say, Stephan?
No. I just wanted to say that it's here to stay too. So what we call hybrid is when you have to organize a session that have to be in person, but also that may be offered remotely. As we will have hybrid workers, so workers will be on site. For some of them, some other will be fully remote, and a portion of them will be in a hybrid situation where they are some days remote and some days on site. So as soon as we will have a hybrid workforce, we will need hybrid classes organized. So it's going to be here to stay probably. And so it was difficult to manage those 2 consecutive day session in spreadsheets and Outlook or Google Calendar or anything like that before the COVID. It's way more complex, and it's becoming impossible now to manage those non-consecutive sequences, Monday, Tuesday, then Thursday, then the next Monday, instead of having 2 days in a row, the people with more resources, because we need the classroom, but we also need the virtual classroom because we have a hybrid world, and we also need a producer to support the instructor, plus we still need the instructor. So the level of complexity that's why Training Orchestra is booming too, is that, it was difficult, and now it's moving to impossible to manage all those training operation manually.
Well, and again, hopefully anybody listening or watching this is understand. And the thing is, that can feel overwhelming. I will tell you right now, because the hybrid thing, I think a lot of people think this is a new trend. Hybrid's been coming for us like a freight train for a while. We've maybe held it at bay for a bit, but it's been coming for us for a bit, and now it's here. And I think, to your point, for a lot of folks, when COVID first hit and everything got distributed, there was a bit of a mentality of, well, this will be over in some sort of period of time. So we've got to bridge the gap. We've got to get through it, and then things will go back and it'll be okay. But I think what more and more leaders are starting to realize, to your point, Stephan, is this whole hybrid thing isn't going anywhere. So the complexity of this is not going anywhere. In fact, it's only going to go greater, and accountability on learning leaders is growing. It's at a high point from my experience and the conversations I'm having. And then on top of it, the demand from learners, their expectations are going way up as personalization comes on us. And so this idea of, well, how do we do this really well is becoming extremely complex. And the days of, like you said, we have a 2-day session and we host it and that's it. That's what we do. They're behind us. And I think the idea that, is that dead? No, but the complexity of how you do it has gone up big time.
Yeah, so you have in one end this level of complexity, and in the second end, and Peter, if ever you want to share another screen, for example, with the page 10 as an example, is engaging the instructor, finding the best available instructor. What's the reality? The reality is people, as we were saying, are giving phone call and sending email to a small group of people that they are where they know that this group of people is talented and can train on this and that subject, but there is a war on talent. We have to immediately find the best trainers. So you can see here, for example, the call for trainer or call for tender. Peter, if you want to explain a little bit, you explain that very well.
Yeah, this is great when you have a situation where you've got a large pool of trainers and you may not have full control of their schedule, or you have subject matter experts, as Stephan was talking earlier, right? And you want to make sure you have the right person. But rather than scheduling and then chasing people down and assigning a trainer, basically you can put out what we call a call for tender. Really should be called call for trainer. The idea is you schedule a training event, okay, and then you send out to a pool of trainers, okay, that you are subject matter experts, a request saying, saying, hey, we've got this training coming up on December 15th, right? Who in this topic, who is available to facilitate it? And then they get to go into their portal. They receive an email, obviously a notification, say, hey, check your portal, and they can go in here, and now they can see all of those courses that they've been added as a call for tender, and then they can respond. Are they interested? Okay, and now it doesn't mean if they say yes, it doesn't mean that all they're doing is raising their hand saying
it's
yes.
It's not a guarantee, but it's basically an opt-in type approach where you say this is the gig, and this goes back to what I said earlier in terms of organizations looking to create talent mobility. Opportunity in a learning organization is exactly what you're talking about, where you say, I've got a gig, I'm putting this out there. Who's interested in potentially taking this opportunity? Who's interested in doing some of this?
Yeah.
Yeah, and building, I think, a community of instructors is something that is super
Yeah.
important. You know, you have the best experts in your organization, but everybody struggle. We absolutely need the marketing team to do marketing stuff because the world is changing, and we need the engineers to work on their project. But at the same time, still we recruit. We need to do skill transfer. We need to upskill. We need to reskill. You know, the world is changing, so transferring the skills is critical. So building this community of instructor is something, it's an asset for an organization. Let's imagine that you arrive in a new organization, Chris, and you have this asset already built of 1,500 subject matter experts mapped with their expertise, what they can, what they are certified to teach, you know, if they can facilitate or if they can just support a session, if they, you know, this is an asset for an organization, and that's the only way to do it. Today, it's done with spreadsheets and phone call, and you know, it's just someone, oh, I know someone who said that, who was able to do this and that. So it's not processed, it's not organized, and it's an asset for an organization to build a community of instructor, of experts.
Well, and again, the more you talk about this, the more the demand that I hear in conversations about talent, the war on talent. And people may think, how on earth did a TRMS conversation turned into talent mobility? It could feel like, wow, that's a pretty big disconnect, but it's actually not, because what you're talking about right now is at the core of a lot of the challenges people are having. So again, just some of these use cases that I'm thinking about in terms of, you have people out there who are struggling to understand, where can I add value to the organization outside of just my day-to-day? And I want to help the organization get better. I want to help with these things, but I may not know where those opportunities sit. And those opportunities, one, they may not even come to me. They may go to my boss, who thinks I'm too busy to even bother to ask me in the first place, type of a thing, where this is actually allowing people to say, it's allowing a learning organization or whoever to say, we have this opportunity. We need somebody who is skilled in doing this type of a thing, that's capable of doing this. And we're then empowering the workforce to say, hey, I've got time, I've got expertise, and I'm willing to contribute to this, and actually giving them opportunity to showcase that, which that is at the core of what we're talking about. That talent mobility conversation that's happening is, those are at the root of what it's trying to get at.
Then once you have built this community of instructor, you're able to win the war on talent, because you were able to have the experts who can for real upskill and reskill your organization. You can execute your strategy. It's very interesting to say, well, let's upskill and reskill, and let's do this and that. How are you doing it? You know,
how?
You need to have this
I know everybody's saying it. Everybody's talking about it, but the how is much more complicated than people realize.
Right now we have the let's do it, and here is who need what. Now, how do you do it? You know, do you have this community of trainers? Have you built that? Are you able to know if they're available or not? Who is not talented and you don't want to use anymore? And who's the best? This is the way to win the war on talent. You know, for any organization, it's a lot about upskilling and reskilling, because we're not going to recruit a lot of people. You know, there is not a lot of budget to recruit new people in the new today. So upskilling and reskilling, you're doing it with the best instructor. So building the community of instructor is the best way to execute your strategy to upskill and reskill. So this is something that is really strategic. That's why the leadership are really carefully listening what we say at Training Orchestra.
Okay. Well, and what's interesting about this is, if you're following some of the trends that are happening, people are talking a lot about user-generated content. Okay, that's a big trend right now, user-generated content. But in many regards, when people are talking about this, they're talking about it in terms of digital content. So how do we get people to create videos or create resources, things like that we can put somewhere and make available? But in some ways, what we're talking about here is actually doing user-generated content on a live human level, where we can say, where do we have people with expertise in the organization that we can utilize to actually help us in some of these reskilling, upskilling things, to again reduce the burden on us as learning and development to have to be the ones to figure it all out and figure out what is all the expertise we need to transfer to people, what is all the structure that we need to be able to do, and actually be able to bring subject matter experts from the field, from the fold into this and say, help us do this. Because again, many of them want to. Many of them have a desire to help. They just don't really know how or where to put that expertise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think you also build, I think, when we talk about a learning culture and, the more people are involved in the learning process and given the opportunity to share, I think it creates more of a community and really helps enhance a learning culture within an organization. And people want to be able to contribute, right?
They do.
Yeah.
I really can't. So again, I didn't spend my career in HR until recently. My most recent move's now in HR. But in all the other business functions that I've led and been part of, to your point, there is this desire from people to use their expertise to help other people who are trying to do it. They really do. It was almost easy to find people who would be willing to say, hey, could you come speak at this thing? We're trying to help people understand what's going on in this space. And people wanted to do it. Now, granted, to the paperclip and Post-it note approach, that doesn't really work super well because one, you don't know where they are. Two, you're guessing, and then somebody comes and you go, oh, yeah, like I get they want to, but from a skill standpoint, they really were not very skilled to be able to do this type of a thing. But then you don't know, or only you know because you were the one that ran the session and saw it type of a thing. So actually being able to keep track of all this and know where are your best subject matter experts, the people who have a desire to help and who have the skills to help. How do we manage all that so that we can actually tackle this upskilling thing? Because Stephan, to your point, everybody's talking about we need to upskill, we need to reskill, we need to right skill, we need to whatever skill you want to throw on the end of a word. And many are struggling to understand, but how do we do it? And I think I saw a statistic that less than 10% of companies are actually satisfied with their upskilling efforts.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
there's a massive opportunity.
Yeah. We are in a learner-centric world because it's due to technology. The LMS have heavily invested, and the experience was not there. So and it has been a very big transformation. To move from 100% of ILTV ILT to 30% of e-learning. So it has been a very big transformation. So it was key to have the best LMS doing that, but they have been very focused on the learner while succeeding, and that because when we were young at school, what is more important than everything, a great teacher.
Yeah.
And it completely makes a difference. We know that, so it's really an asset for an organization to have this learning culture, to have this learner community. It's not all about the learner. It's also about the trainer, build the trainer community. I mean, it's a, very strategic, to be able to execute the strategy to upskill and reskill, as you said.
Okay. Well, there are a couple other avenues that I would like to go down, but we are at the top of the hour and we've got to wrap it up. And I don't think we could have ended on a better note as far as I'm concerned. And who would have thought a conversation on training operations and getting your classroom and resources organized would turn into how you can actually employ a talent management or talent mobility strategy and tackle the upskilling, reskilling challenge of your organization. I don't think I could have predicted that we were going to get there with it, but this was a fantastic conversation as always, and thoroughly enjoyed both of you making time to join me again. Hopefully everybody watching got something out of this, and this has got you thinking a little bit more about the how and the value of cleaning up your operations and how optimizing your operations can actually have a dramatic impact on your end users, your learners, your internal resources, your funds, your team, and ultimately the performance of your organization. So thank you both for joining me. Thank you everyone for listening, and I hope everyone has a fantastic weekend.